Page 3 now. The Obama Supreme Court nominee. Expect him, or more likely her, any day now. No doubt a liberal cloaked in a phony constitutional black robe. And of course, Democrats in Congress are foaming at the mouth, pushing for the Senate to hold confirmation hearings.
Some piece that he was an advocate for was the honoring the Constitution of the United States. Justice Scalia was a scholar of the Constitution, and the Constitution says that in case of a vacancy on the Supreme Court, the President of the United States shall nominate, and the Senate of the United States shall confirm a candidate to be a member of the Supreme Court.
So when the Republicans say it's not going to happen and that they're not going to even go there?
Well, I guess they're just saying that they don't intend to honor their responsibilities in the Supreme Court but, in terms of the Constitution. But it kind of begs the question why this president should not be able to nominate.
Advice and consent, Nancy. Now, 8 remaining Supreme Court justices convened on Monday. It is the first time that any of them have met without Scalia, who was appointed back in 1986. Among other cases, affirmative action, public union dues, abortion, and Obamacare. A constitutionally huge list. Scalia surely will be missed. Joining me now from Charleston, South Carolina, Regional Director for the Convention of the States Project, Ken Clark. Ken, I was really moved by the outpouring of support from mourners who filed in and out of the Supreme Court on Friday, honoring the memory and the legacy of Justice Scalia. Surely he is going to be missed, and really it's a testament to the jurist that he was on the Supreme Court.
Graham, it's great to be with you, and I couldn't agree with you more. That man was a giant among the Supreme Court, and he is truly going to be missed. And I think it's kind of interesting when I hear those clips of Nancy Pelosi and others like her. You know, they always want to bait us into this trap and try to claim that we're not appointing or won't be following the constitutional duty because, quote unquote, this president. I find that very, very interesting.
Yes, and of course, she's insinuating, I'll say it, she's insinuating that everybody's racist. Barack
Absolutely.
Obama has gotten virtually everything he wants, and then some, because he has usurped the United States Constitution. And that brings us to the Article 5 Convention of the States. Pertaining to the United States Supreme Court specifically, among some of the possible amendments that we're talking about in the Convention of the States is limiting the scope, if you will, of the United States Supreme Court. Number 1 would be possible term limits for Supreme Court justices. And number 2, if we have a rogue ruling like we had last year from this Supreme Court, a mechanism in place for states to undo the damage by a rogue Supreme Court.
Well, it's interesting, Graham. The United States Supreme Court was never, ever meant to hold the kind of power that they do. Every time they make a decision, for instance, Obamacare, or something like that, they are effectively amending the Constitution, the original Constitution, from its original intent. We know that. So yes, the Convention of States Project, through Article 5, which is a gift from our founders that is constitutional, it's actually in the Constitution, we can rein in an out-of-control Supreme Court. And there are a lot of different ways to do it. We can change their power and scope. We can put in term limits from them. Think about what we could do if we redefine the Commerce Clause or the General Welfare Clause. There are a lot of different things we can do, and we can limit the power of the Supreme Court. Right now, outside of the presidency, it is the most powerful branch of our government.
5 states out of the 32 needed for a convention of the states have approved such a resolution in their state houses, but we've hit a sticking point in some states, specifically Virginia and Arizona. What's the problem?
Well, Virginia, we have passed through the House. We need to pass through the Senate. We need 3 more senators in Virginia to stand up and say, yes, we're going to do the will of the people. We are going to follow the will of the people. And so we need all hands on deck. We need all our constituents to call their senators in Virginia and tell them to pass our resolution. That's what we need in Virginia. Now, in Arizona, it's a very different scenario. The president of the Senate a guy by the name of Andy Biggs is holding up our resolution in Arizona, and that's a problem. So we need our constituents in Arizona to call that guy and say, you know what? We need you to follow the will of the people.
And you know what? If you're not a resident of Arizona, go ahead and let them know. This Andy Biggs is the guy, Senator Andy Biggs of Arizona. Yes. Let them know, because this is not just an Arizona issue, of course. This is a national issue, an issue that, as you said, the framers of the Constitution gave us to fix a Washington, D.C. that will not fix itself. And as it pertains to the United States Supreme Court, indeed, I think one of the first things that we need to have is some sort of term limit, because back when the Constitution was framed in 1787, they didn't expect these Supreme Court justices to live as long as they are living. Witness Ginsburg, for example. Real quick, there are other states, Nebraska, Kansas, and Oklahoma, also on the tipping point. They're on the verge right now?
Actually, Nebraska and Kansas both failed today. And each one has its own separate issues, but we thought we were going to get through Nebraska. We didn't. There was a filibuster by the left that they were successful in killing our resolution in Nebraska. And in Kansas, we have a lot higher of a milestone in order to get through. We need a 2/3 vote. We were 7 shy, but it's not altogether over in Kansas. We may have one final shot at this yet this year.
All right. Time to get on the phone, write some emails, and let people know that we need to have this. Ken, thank you.